Hey guys, I just want to make a quick video on using your Ti-nspire calculator to create regression functions. Okay, so let's get started. So where we're going to start is at home, right? So let's press the little house, go back to this window, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a series of tabs that are like spreadsheets and lists and everything else, right? So that's actually these icons in the bottom. But the other place, kind of the more common place to get them is if you go to a new document, it's like on a computer, right? You're making a new document. So I'm going to push enter. And now I'm going to pick which one I want to add. So where I want to start is I want to make a list, right? I want to make a list for my data, and then we're going to make a regression function out of that. Okay, so let's add list. Okay, so here's our main screen, right? We're going to start entering things in. So now on the Ti-nspire calculator, what we need to do first is we need to label like our X and our Y, right? Or these could be any labels you want. I'll just call them X and Y for now, but you could call it, speed and distance or time and distance, anything you want, right? So I'm just gonna make it X and Y just to make life a little bit easier. So that'll be my X and that will be my Y. Okay, make sure you're entering it into the top one and not this second one, right? You guys can pretty much ignore this second column, and we'll start entering our data here. Okay, so let's make a list. So let's say that our list was, okay, so I just paused it and put some data in there. So maybe if you guys can pause it, put the same data if you're following along. So one thing I want you to notice though, when you put this in, a common mistake is, let's say when you were typing in your last number, like 10 here, so maybe people would put 10 and they would just leave it like that. That's not going to be right. That's not actually like part of the table yet. You have to push enter. You have to still push enter, and now it's part of the table, okay? So just don't make that mistake. All right, so now we're pretty good. We have our data, right? You can scroll up and down like I just did there. And now I want to see my data, okay? So the way that we see our data is with a scatter plot. Okay, and a scatter plot is just like, a place where you can throw a bunch of points, right? So we can actually see the thing. So what we want to do is we want to add another tab, right? This is the one tab I have up here is my list and spreadsheets, right? I want to add one more. So the way we add another page is by going control and then document. You see there says plus page at the top of it. So we're going to add another page. Okay. And then the next one we're going to do is add data and statistics. Okay. So here is our scatter plot, okay? And right now that doesn't look right, does it? I've just kind of got these numbers thrown all randomly around here, right? And the reason for that is I need to define what my axes are, right? It doesn't know, like I know what X is and Y is, right? But the graph doesn't know that yet. So I just need to make my Y-axis actually my Y variables, right? So those are the options. It knows like the variables. If you would have wrote like distance and time or something like that here, then that's what would show up here, right? So anyway, I'm going to make my Y my Y. Okay, so there you go. So it figured that one out, but that's not quite right either. It just made them all, up and down across the Y. And now what we want to do is define our X. And then this should start to look better, right? And then, yeah, so there is our data, making like a line like this, right? Okay, so the next question is how do I make an equation out of this, right? Because you can see this thing, it kind of looks like a straight line, right? If I had a line that went like straight through here and up, right? It just looks like this one's a little high and this one's a little low. But I should be able to figure out what the equation of the line that goes straight through that guy is, right? So let's do that. And the way we do that is we're going to go menu and then analyze and then regression, right? That's what we're doing right now. We're doing regression functions. So regression. And then these should look familiar. We've been having units on these, right? Where here's our line, right? Linear regression, mx plus b. This one's the same thing, isn't it? A plus bx. This is just a different order, right? This is like our slope and an x plus a constant. This just has the constant in the front, and then it's slope plus or times the x. Same thing though, just whatever like style you want to see it in. Okay, and then quadratic, right? We had a unit on that polynomials, quadratic and cubic functions. So it could be either of those. We won't do quartic. We won't really do power, but we'll be doing exponential, logarithmic, and sinusoidal, right? So those are kind of the main ones that we'll be using there. And I want to just figure out the one that fits the data the best. So let's see. So show linear. I'll do that. And there you go. So that's the line that fits that data. And that's pretty good, right? That's actually like a decent fit. We don't have a lot of points, so it's hard to kind of tell. Because the other one, maybe it actually is like a quadratic with a negative coefficient, right? That like would open down like that. Maybe that would be the one too. So let's see how that would fit. So I go Menu, Analyze Graph, Regression. Let's see how it thinks a quadratic would fit that data. And that doesn't look bad either, does it? So this is the thing with this unit, right? Is that we're just trying to do the best we can to fit the data to a relation. And this is what would happen in real life, right? This is literally what scientists would do when they're getting their data on whatever, is they try to fit it to a model, right? Like, does this model fit quadratic, or does this model fit linear, right? And one will fit better than the other. In this case, it actually almost kind of looks like it's fitting our quadratic a bit better. Okay, so now next one, this kind of looks a little confusing on the Ti-nspire, right? Where it just has all of your numbers written out like this, right? Now, if you can't see it quite clearly because something's in front of it or like it's hard to see, you can move this thing around. And the way you move it around is by long pressing on the trackpad. You see the little hand there? So if you press and hold for a second, it doesn't do that on my computer, but the hand would clamp down showing that you're holding it. And then you can scroll it around and move it up and down. Okay, now the other thing, these are just decimals, right? They don't need to be this long, right? This is just a really accurate decimal that they have going on there. It'd be fine to say negative 0.286, right? Maybe leave 3 decimals and then x squared, and then plus 5.22, round that up to 9x. And then this one confuses kids, just plus negative, right? That's really minus. You just say minus 13.514. Okay, and that'd be it. All right, so that's pretty much it. You could end right there, and that would be how you find your regression function, right? Just write that down. And then from there, you could just graph it, right? Then we could, well, add another page, and you could just add a graph, and then you could graph it, right? And see the way that looks. What I would like to show you, though, one more thing, because sometimes, right, like if I go back here, if I want this a whole exact thing and I don't want to write it down and I don't want to maybe make a mistake, right? I want to make sure I get that whole equation when I graph it so I can find things. Is the way we'll do this is we're going to go back to our original table, okay? And I'm going to click over into the next cell. All right. And now from here, I'm going to press Menu. And then I'm going to go down to statistics, because that's what we're really doing here, right? We're figuring out some statistics of this. And then stat calculations. And then you'll see all of my things again, right? So if I wanted to plot that quadratic regression, right? Then here, so I'm going to click on this one. Now again, I have to say what my X list and Y list are. So this is just like labeling our axes before. I need to make my X list my X and my Y list my Y. And then press OK. That's just setting it up, right? And then you can see here's all my data again, right? So I can here scroll over a little bit. Oop. So it's quadratic. It's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, right? And then they actually just give me the a value, the b value, and the c value, right? And maybe you'll notice that actually if we knew that we wanted to use a quadratic regression, we didn't actually even need to do this step at all, right? But it was kind of nice to do it just to make sure that it actually fit the data well, right? Because now we can actually see how that thing fits. But if we wanted to, we could have actually just done this to begin with, just made our table and then made a quadratic regression from it, right? And just figured out those numbers. Now, from this point, from this table, what we can do, and this is a little bit of maybe a tough one to remember, is that we can insert this into a graph. And what I mean is this. So if the next step, if you go Control and then I, right, for insert, then we can insert that data, that regression function, into a graph. Okay? And then you'll say, okay, but it didn't actually do it, did it? Now, this is on F2 right now. It actually did insert it, but it's F1. So I actually have to push up. And then there it is, right? There's that regression function that I found. And look how accurate that is, right? So this is like the most, you wouldn't write down all those decimals on paper and then plug all those in. You might make a mistake, right? So that's a good way to be very accurate with this. And then the last thing, I just have to push enter. And then there you go. There's my quadratic regression coming up here. that doesn't look quite right. And the reason why it doesn't look quite right is because my window setting is off, right? So this is where you could change your window setting. So we go menu, window zoom, window settings. And I probably change my X max to more like the numbers that we were using there, right? I forget what we were using, but I'll make my X max all the way to 20 and my Y max to, I don't know, 40. There you go. So that was the one that fit the data. And we were only really looking at this part of it though, weren't we? Right? For that data. We never got to the peak of it or down here, but this would be the general trend that data would follow. Now the reason why this is useful to plot that, right, on an actual graph. Maybe I'll talk about that too, sorry. We can do things with this graph, right? We can figure out like what the Y value is when the X value is this, right? We can find the intersections. We can do all that kind of stuff. You can't do that from this scatter plot, right? There's no, I can't go menu, find intersection or anything like that, right? There's, yeah. So yeah, I can't, I have to make sure that I turn this into an actual graph. Okay, and then yeah, if you get a bunch of windows open you don't like, just push escape. Okay, so then I'm gonna go back to this graph that I made, right? And now here I can find things, right? Like let's say if it said, according to my regression function, when X is, let's say 4, what is Y, right? So when X is 4, what is Y? Okay, so the way we could find that is, again, you go menu, and this time I'm gonna go trace, right? This is actually a good one for trace. So trace, what trace does, it gives you this little spider guy, and you can move him around wherever you like, right? So maybe I could actually just keep going down until I got to 4, but it actually skipped past it. It went 3.9 for my X, and then skips past it to 4.2, so that's not very helpful. But what you can do in this window is as soon as you have it set into this trace function, if I just start typing 4, right? You see how it says X is equal to 4? And then I just push enter. And then it actually locks it to that. It says, okay, when X is 4, Y is 2.83. Okay, so there you go. And you might be thinking, okay, well, that doesn't make sense because we made a table. Didn't we make a table? And on that table, didn't we know what, when X was 4, wasn't it supposed to be 3, right? But just if we think about this for a second, this is the actual data, right? These are the dots. Okay, these are this might be better here. This is the data here. When X is 4, Y is 3 for that point. That's not the case with this regression line, right? This line that we were looking at here, this quadratic one. So that's not the case with that one, right? So with that one, it's actually a little bit lower. I can't see it from this graph, right? But that makes sense that they would be a little bit different because this line doesn't go exactly through all those points, okay? All right, so last one, I'll just show you one more little nifty trick that will come up that we'll be doing a lot. Let's say that the question was, if Y is, let me get a good number. If Y is 11, what is X? Okay, so if Y is 11, what is X? According to my regression line, right? So if we're given a Y value and we want to find an X value, the best way to do that is actually to graph another line, right? We'll graph a straight, like a horizontal line at 11, okay? So I need to graph one more. The way we do that on this calculator is we type in, or we hit tab, and then that brings us up to F2. And remember, you can scroll through these, right? There's my F1 again, and then down gives me to F2 there, okay? And then I'm just gonna type in F2 of X is equal to 11, and then enter. Okay. Oh, that was a bad example. It didn't go that high. Let's change our mind here. Let's say here, tab, and I'll say here, go up. Let's change that to like 9. So it actually touches our line there. Okay, and then enter. So when Y is 9, what is X? Okay, so if you see this, right, this line here is a horizontal line at 9, right? I want to know where this thing is 9. So that's really where they cross, isn't it? And actually there would be 2 points here, wouldn't there? There'd be 2 situations where this thing crosses. And that will happen, right? So really what I'm after here is I'm after the intersection. Okay, so let's figure out the intersection. So the way we do that is by going menu, analyze graph, and then intersection. And then we just click to the left, right, because we want the lower bound, and then click to the right, and it's already kind of figured it out, didn't it? And then there's my point. And again, you can move that if it's getting in the way. So there you go, 6.93. So when y is 9, x is 6.93. And then you would just have to do it one more time for the other point. So let's do that again. Menu, analyze graph, intersection. We click to the left, we click to the right, and then there you go. And then I'll move it up so I can see it a little bit better. So 11.4. Okay, so there will be cases where you will have to find both of those points, especially with like a sinusoidal function when we get doing those ones. So